Yeah, good.
Jesse, while you don't have everyone, you do have quorum if you wanted to start, because we've got Dallas and Randy on.
Great, yeah, it does. It looks like we've got plenty to get started. So thank you to Dan for sending out the minutes. I will, sorry, I got a few bandwidth issues tonight. Yeah, call to order, 7:03. Are you good taking the minutes, Dan?
Yes, I will take the minutes tonight.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So it looks like we have Atashna, right? I'm going to check. You can hear us.
Yes, okay. I'm here.
Okay, Atashna, we have Brian. I think you're on there.
Yep, I'm here. Just on mute.
Okay, great. No, just checking you can all hear. Got Chris Perret.
Yeah, here.
Awesome. We've got Dan and myself. Great. So you just received the minutes, probably from Dan. Does anyone want to go over them?
I haven't had a chance to look at them, but keep going and I'll make comments if I need to.
Yeah.
And quick question, am I supposed to be sending them out as well? I initially understood it as I send it to you and Miranda, but I can definitely
just go ahead and just send it to all the board, and then everyone will send you their edits.
Okay, all right, sounds good. I will do that in the future.
But yeah, they looked great. So we'll look at that. I think we're all rereading them, but they looked really good. If anyone wants us to read them, we can definitely do that.
No, definitely don't.
He's done a great job. They're concise, and he kind of just gets to the nitty gritty. So thank you.
Yeah, they look real good.
And Jesse, I'm saying if Tasna, you're not ready, you could always move the minutes to the end and then just revisit this before we adjourn.
No, they look good. That's fine.
Okay.
I'll read fast.
Right, well, we can get back to that at the end too. All right. So, any public comment? Looks like we've got a few people joining us. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It looks like we don't have Eric on just yet, so that's fine because he's on the Trails Master Plan. Let us just go ahead and introduce some of our folks that we're talking to tonight. We have a few representatives from tennis courts, Ned Rink, skate, and hopefully we'll just be getting some of the information down for the assets for Chipeta Park and the community centre down. So for those joining us tonight, like the real goal of this is just for the process to have like a fact-finding mission. We'd like to be able to feature all of these recreational assets on the town website and link to you and just see how we can better support you as a advisory board too. So we're just looking for like some basic information like who it's run by, who the organization is run by. And if you don't have this information tonight, that's fine too. Like we can work back with that. So we're just looking for the name of the nonprofit it's run by, the best contacts to look into, best contacts for town to connect with you, or the best contacts for public inquiries we can direct over to you guys. We're also looking for email, a website. We would love to be able to link to your sites from the town site. And then just some basic information like hours of operation, seasonal information, dates, costs to use to visit, suggested donations, who your maintenance is funded by, how you manage to do that, land ownership, and any historical information or an origin story, maybe a couple of paragraphs of an origin story that we could feature and really get people excited about kind of what you've got to offer. And then just a bit more historical information like the dates of built-in or dates of maybe major repairs or restoration and any other relevant specs that we should know about that. Oh, and volunteer opportunities too. We'd love to be able to get volunteers over to you and be kind of a conduit for that. And just about things I better do to support you guys. So I don't know if any of you need to be off sooner. I know we've got Randy from Netscape and Dallas from Tennis Courts and Danette from Nedrink. So who would like to go first? Randy?
Well, this is Randy. Yeah, I do have to get off as soon as I can. So what exactly would you like to hear from me?
I mean, any of those things I just listed there. Would you like me to?
So Netscape is, it's in a holding pattern. I hope to dissolve it this year, but there's some loose ends to tie up first. So one thing is we never created the signage that was intended for the skate park, including the donor plaque. Just recognizing our major donors for their contributions. And that was promised 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It never happened because we ran out of money. So, before I dissolve, I hope to unload a number of boxes of hats and t-shirts, maybe get a few bucks per on those, donate the money, remaining money to the town, along with guidance of what we need, or would really like to see for that skate park signage. We had intended a little kiosk there at the entryway. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we are, I'm not actively soliciting donations or doing anything else at this point. It's just, it's kind of, our time, I think, has passed, and it's time to put Netscape to bed.
Randy, this is Atashna.
Hi.
Hello. Is there any documentation, historic documentation on the motivation and the putting together and moving along of the skate park? Is there any historic documentation anywhere that we could make use of for the future?
Well, I just pulled a old backup of Nathan Lazarus skate park website, which had a brief history page on it. So that's worth something.
Yeah.
Several people have approached me for information, and I simply haven't had time to go through all the many hundreds of or thousands of documents I've got and try to cull stuff out. But I do have that. And in fact, it's kind of self-contained. I can give you the website. Basically, anybody can just double click on the index file and the whole website is functional.
Yeah, I think that'd be useful just to maybe, this is Brian, just to maybe guess why Atashna was asking that question is that the topic of the Netscape's come up in the past when various members of the public have approached ProSab and said like, hey, why can't we have bikes in the skate park and that kind of stuff? So we were just looking to try to document some of these frequently asked questions with answers so the community could kind of self-serve when they have questions like that without any need to kind of contact somebody who knows the actual history themselves. It'd be great to just be able to put some of that information up on the ProSab website or somewhere else.
And I don't have documentation of that sort, answers to that kind of question, unless it's in old meeting minutes, which, years and years of minutes. So it's not something that would be readily at hand. I can certainly relate information like that verbally to you, but I don't think it's readily packaged.
Okay, got it. And I think, Jesse, somebody was starting to say something. Oh, yeah, maybe Miranda. Go ahead. I'm going on.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off of you, Brian. Is it possible that maybe one of ProSab's kind of team members could sit down with you and just pick your brain and pull all that information out someday when you've got some time?
that last qualifier is a tough one to get past, but
Right.
but yeah, if you can find that time, yeah, I am certainly willing.
Maybe we can just kind of keep it on our radar, but I think getting that website would be helpful. And when the chat's open, if you wanted to just chat it in here, put it in the chat, or you could email it to us. But I think that would be helpful to start at least pulling some information.
Yeah, it's too much to paste into a chat.
Oh, I see. So Randy, I think what you're saying is that you have the files that make up the website, but that the website isn't currently live anywhere.
Exactly, it's been down
Okay.
for a number of years. You know, I don't have time to maintain it anymore, and it
Okay.
crashed on the web host, and I just never put it back up.
That makes sense.
But this is, you know, it's an old front page site, and if you've got all the files, all the links work.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay.
navigate the site. You know, it isn't totally up to date, but you know, it's got a lot of info.
Yeah, so maybe just given your time commitments and the fact that we're just asking you to tell us everything you know, how about this as a kind of game plan? Dump the website on us, and maybe you can just send it to Jesse or to Miranda or somebody, and we can share it as needed. And then as we troll through the files themselves, maybe we can come up with a specific list of questions that we think remain unanswered, and then try to find a time to meet with you just to say like, hey, here's the last things that people have asked us about, we'd really like to know. And that way we could probably knock that out in probably 30 minutes of your time.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome, thanks.
Great, yeah, thank you, Randy. It would be great if we could, link to that history. It's a fascinating history. Do you know who runs NathanLazarusSkatePark.com at all?
Well, it's not a current site. You know, I did, but the town was not interested in maintaining it or even paying to renew it. So I let that die a few years ago, I believe.
Yeah, somebody's running a website called NathanLazarusSkatePark.com, and it's got some information on there.
Well, I guess they took that on for themselves. Let me bring it up, see what I see.
But it's a really neat story. It would be great for us to highlight kind of some of the history of how it came to be.
I think, Jesse, I'm looking at that site now. I think this is an example of domain squatting, where somebody bought this domain after it expired and they're just trying to monetize it somehow.
Yeah, exactly. This is nothing to do with the actual Nathan Lazarus skate park.
So funny. Yeah, that makes sense.
So is there anything specific, answers to any specific questions you want tonight while you've got them?
No, I think you've hit that stuff. Let's just stay in touch and try and get some of that stuff that we can get up on the frequently asked question list. Anyone else?
Thank you, Randy.
All right, thank you guys for all your service.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Have a good evening.
Super helpful. Well, who would like to go next? Would Dallas or Jeanette be able to speak as to the
Sure.
Ned rink or tennis?
Yeah, I can give. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Sure. Okay. Do you want a little bit of history about the park?
that would be fantastic.
Okay, so if I recall, the park was finished in 2005 or thereabouts. So it's about 15 years old now. It was a GOCO grant, obviously one of the big ones that GOCO did at the time. I think it was $200,000 coming from GOCO and another $100,000 coming from donations. It was originally an ice rink idea, and then GOCO turned it down once, actually, and then basically came back with a different proposal that included tennis as well. And that helped, including tennis, helped win the GOCO grant the second time around. And it also included a bunch more money on the table because there were people who gave money for the tennis courts as well. So it's operated pretty successfully since it started. The season basically goes from about May until October for tennis, and then switches over to ice at the end of October. The ice season usually will start. It used to start, if you guys can believe this, it used to start in November when we first started. But due to climate change, it has actually sort of always shifted a little bit into December. And I think now Danette can probably confirm it's probably still about the second week of December is about the first time you can really, think you can get on the ice. And then it usually goes to the end of February. And I don't think that's changed much. The end of the season is still okay. But we have had seasons that have petered out even in sometime in February. But then usually it sits vacant usually the park sits vacant between February and say April, because there's so much snow we can't really do anything, and then we do the transition over to tennis. The park has one feature which is hard on the volunteers, which is transition the park every year from the ice use to tennis use and back again. And it's all done by the nonprofits that run it. The nonprofit for tennis is called, it's now called Mountain Tennis and Pickleball Association, because when we started, it was originally just tennis, but we got a lot of interest from the senior community to start pickleball. And it originally started as pickleball on the outside courts, but after about a year or two, it kind of petered out at the outdoor courts because of wind, and pickleball balls get moved around by the wind. So actually what happened is the pickleball community started playing in the community center, and that actually has taken on a life of its own. In some sense, it's probably half of the nonprofit's activity is pickleball at the community center. So the nonprofit now actually rents out space at the community center multiple times a week to have like senior pickleball, and very specifically senior pickleball sessions, and as well pickleball sessions in the evenings for adults as well. So I think there's probably 3 or 4 nights of pickleball. I'm not sure what's happening during COVID. So from the tennis point of view, we run it from like May to October. We have a functioning website. People buy their passes online there. The town should definitely link out to it or advertise it. People just pay online for their passes. We have both season passes as well as daily passes for people who are coming to town that are just VRBO visitors or something. And we have a fair number of people that did this. During the last year, we had the most use of the tennis courts, and it's all because of COVID. Because people didn't travel, many people used the courts. So I think we had a much greater usage of the courts this year. And financially, the nonprofit's very healthy. It's always been healthy because the maintenance of the courts is fairly, minimal. We clean the courts and we do the transition every spring. And Danette has it easy. The ice guys have it easy because what happens is that all winter long it has snow on it, and you'd be surprised. We all know that we have a lot of wind in Nederland. We actually have a lot of dust in Nederland, and what happens is it all gets deposited on the ice. By the time the ice melts and we clean off or we wash off the courts, there's like a layer of mud. So it's actually really difficult to do the transition in the springtime because it's muddy and wet. It's gotten a lot better because we used to have these gigantic white liners as well. And then, but after that period of time, the courts are pretty self-sufficient. So between May and October, nobody really has to do anything. We have a drop box where we take money, and we take money on the website. And then a few of us go over and just kind of maintain the bathrooms and stuff all season long. And then at the end of October, we turn it over to the ice team, and then they do their transition to ice, which involves moving these boards back and forth. I think the tennis group and the pickleball group is very healthy and very active. But we do have a couple of requests if you're interested in sort of how you could support us. Two things. The surfaces of the courts deteriorate after some time. Usually they only last about 5 or 6 years. We've actually gotten really lucky with ours because the first version of the court surfacing lasted a long time. We've resurfaced one court, and I believe the town helped us with that by paying some portion of it, but the tennis group paid the other half. We also have gotten grants out of the U.S. Tennis Association to help us with that as well. But the other two courts are in pretty bad condition now, and they probably need help. When I was on the town board, I tried to request this, but we always were shy of money. You know, at the very end of the budget season, you know, it's either a snowplow or a tennis court, and you know, the snowplow wins. So we would request a little bit of money to help us resurface those courts because they've gotten to the point now where they could be dangerous because the surfacing comes up and people can trip on it. The other thing I would suggest, and this is an interesting question for Danette, is I've been thinking about something that the town has said multiple times in its documents about 2020, you know, Envision 2020 and other things, is to maintain what we have. And ProSab is to maintain what we have rather than building new stuff. And so like even though everybody wants to like go build something new, there was a clear statement by the community to maintain what we have. And right now, the maintenance of the park, both the ice part and the tennis part, is really falling on the nonprofits, and they do everything. And the town has not really invested any money. One thing that I think that would probably help us, and I think that this is a question for Danette and the NedRink guys, is maybe to consider going back to GoCo and asking for a grant to reconfigure the way the park is set up. One of the reasons that the park does this transition every year is that when we designed the park, the ice group, which I was a part of at the time, you know, let me just say that my kids played hockey, so we were there all the time too. We used to think that we needed to have a competition regulated or a competition size rink, so that if they were ever like high school games or something there, it would work. That never actually took place, and that's the reason we do the transition. We've talked in the past about leaving the boards where they are in the tennis configuration, which would give you just much bigger ice if you left it that way. But the problem is that the Zamboni building got built too close to the ice rink. And so I've been thinking about the fact that like if we wanted to go back to GoCo for something that's kind of like help us sustain what we already built, it might be a very good grant opportunity to ask GoCo to say, you know, we have this great park, but it's to help us maintain it. Can you help us move this building back, basically destroy it and build a new one? It's a small building, and then leave the boards in their big configuration. And so what would happen is we would have an even bigger size ice rink. Right now it's Olympic size. We'd have a bigger size ice rink, and the two nonprofits would not have to do this transition every summer or every spring and fall. It's something I just thought about recently in terms of, you know, we're all getting older. The groups, you know, get thinner. The ice rink group I know just, you know, kind of changed about 2 or 3 years ago, and there's like a new guard. So if we want to think about supporting the groups, it might be worth it to go back and see if we could get a GoCo grant to do some of this kind of reconfiguration. I think would help everybody. When we built that park, it was on a shoestring. You know, so what you see over there right now, we used to call it Smurfville. You know, it's just this little set of tough shed buildings and one permanent building, which is the Zamboni building, which is basically a Zamboni closet. It's like the Zamboni fits in it, and anybody else can't. You know, so it's like we did those things because that was all we could afford, and it would be interesting to go back and fix some things. So, in summary, you know, there's all kinds of information on our website. I used to have a ton of information about the history of the park. I don't think I have it anymore. But there's a few of us around that were all back when it started. If you wanted a history of it all. But it's been one of the more successful things in this town. It was really a community came together to put it all together. It served two different purposes for a long time. There was never there was friction at some points in the process, but people worked through that, and it stood the test of time. So it's still working for both uses. So I think it's been successful.
Thank you so much, Dallas. Who should people contact if they want to volunteer?
They could contact me or Darren Davenport's the other person who's very invested in the park and the pickleball.
Okay.
We don't have I don't think we have anything on our website that's like, do you want to volunteer? Click here. The thing is we don't really need volunteers. It's not like we have to have staff. We usually email out a group of people in the springtime to do this transition, and it usually is like 5 or 6. I used to do the transition when we first started the park, and there are stories where I recruited Boulder County inmates, if you can believe it. I can't believe I remember this now. Like, at the time, it was really a big deal to move to retransition this park. We actually asked Boulder County for help, and they brought up a van full of inmates, and the inmates help us move the park around. So I mean, we've transitioned. We've gotten everything a lot more streamlined now, but we don't really need volunteers per se for the tennis group. I think the net can tell you the rink group might, because they have people who have to work there. When the ice rink is running.
No, massively helpful. That's hugely helpful. Does anyone else have any questions? I know we definitely will get a link from the town to the tennis rink there, tennis center.
One other thing I'll mention is we did have a break-in at the park during the summertime. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but
yeah.
You did hear about it, or
did hear about that? What was that?
Some people were kind of camping in that area or something, and we caught them on video because we have a video camera there, so we can keep track of actually the number of people that use the park. It's not really for security; it's just more like how many people are playing tennis and are they paying. But actually, so they broke into the Zamboni building and they stole tools and things, and they broke in, and they also stole like a wireless router. They broke into the hockey building, I believe, as well. They also broke into our tennis shed and our tennis building and stole a ball machine, which is probably the most expensive thing they stole from us. I think the ball machine probably is an $800 to $1,000 piece of equipment. So we lost a few pieces of equipment because of this break-in. I don't know if the town knows all about it. My kids were actually there the day these guys were hanging out, and so my kids kind of knew who was there and gave a report. But it's the only time we've ever had a break-in, and it's unfortunate because we lost, a little bit of capital in the process. We don't own a lot, but what we did own was what they took.
Yeah, I'm assuming a new building or a new reconfiguration would help with security too, then.
Yeah, some of the doors are pretty rickety.
Yeah.
To some of the buildings. I don't remember how they actually broke in. I don't think I ever went to go see if they just broke into the door jambs or whatever. I don't remember anybody saying anything about damage, but they did get in, and they probably just cut locks and yeah. So.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate trend. We've seen a lot more of this last year, I feel like.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions for Dallas? Thank you very much. All right. Thanks. Thank you, Dallas. I really appreciate that. That was really helpful. So, Danette, do you want to let's pick your brain a little bit about ice rink side of things?
Sure. So I'm going to repeat some of the history that Dallas said. I've been in contact with some of the people that have been instrumental in establishing the park, and they put together a little thing for me. So I'm just going to read it to you guys so you get the history. And again, it's a lot what Dallas said. And you guys are free to have this to put on any website. We do have a website as well, which is extensive and does have volunteer opportunities for people to contact us. So In 2001, Peak Healthy Communities conducted a recreational survey, and the number one request from the community was to build an ice rink. At that time, Mud Lake served as a local gathering place for recreational skaters and Nederland Youth Hockey Association. NYHA was already functioning as an organized youth hockey program, playing games in Boulder and Gilpin County. And Ned Rink was born from the momentum of the NYHA program and the parents that wanted to take the next step. And they are still a very integral part of all the volunteers. In 2003, Gary Sandon, the director of Peak to Peak Healthy Communities, started the process by working with the town government to secure the land and start the GOCO grant approval. Tim Murphy formed a board and the nonprofit Recreational Ice for Nederland Kids, otherwise known as RINK. And RINK took on the task of gathering community support in the form of signatures and matching funds. The mayor suggested the park host tennis in the off-season. In 2004, a GOCO grant of $200,000 was awarded to $200,000, was awarded to the town. The new park began in the fall of 2004. Project and construction manager were hired, and by January 2005, a makeshift rink was up and running. The first season was on a newly excavated level site, plastic liner, and old wooden dasher board on dirt. With the help of Nederland Fire Department, 10 hoses were connected to flood the rink, and it was opened by the new year. With the following construction season, excavation was completed with perimeter drains, a post-tension concrete slab was poured, water and mains were installed, and the Zamboni garage was completed. The last step was to have the dasher boards anchored to the concrete slab. Although there was a steep learning curve to tackle the challenges of building on ice, on a 0.5% sloped tennis surface, volunteers stepped in all aspects of the building, the ice, and managing the rink. The number of guests to join the Nederland rink has grown with each of the last 16 seasons. Folks from across the state have traveled to Nederland to participate in youth hockey jamborees. In addition to all the youth hockey events, Nedrink has hosted speed skating, Nederland curling club, hockey skills clinics, learn to skate classes, open recreational skating, and disco nights. It's clear that the rink has been a great addition to the local economy and quality of life. So that's the past history. We are run by a group of volunteers. We rely heavily on recruiting volunteers during the season to be the rink attendants who take payment and are there to oversee anything that happens during the sessions. The earliest in my experience that we've opened is beginning of December. We go to the end of February, hopefully, but by that time the sun gets so high that it starts hitting the north boards and melting the north ice. So the 2 to 3 feet on the north board starts melting. It's so high and it just starts heating up. There have been proposals in the past to put a cover on it because in addition to the sun hitting it, there are, it's very labor intensive when it snows. So the ice has to be cleared and the town has been very generous in loaning us the use of the skid steer in order to clear the ice quickly. And so we have that right next to the Zamboni shed there. And I think a cover could potentially help, but it'd be very, very expensive and it had to be for up there, of course. But that would greatly reduce the amount that it takes to clear the ice and have it right in the morning. It's intensely labor intensive to keep this place running. The website has a schedule there. We have a full schedule during the holiday 2-week break that the winter break there. So we operate every day. It's usually 9 a.m. to the latest is 9 p.m., but that usually doesn't happen during the week. That only happens on the weekends. We've added disco skate in the last 2 years, and that's been incredibly successful with the community. There's a lot of people that want to come out, and we have disco lights out there, and it's super fun atmosphere, and community members and then people from Denver, that everybody's coming up to hang out and skate. Super amazing, magical place. We have resident and non-resident prices. An adult non-resident is $11. Adult resident is $8, and then it goes down for children. We have season passes that can be purchased. We did have a reservation system for a very short time due to COVID, but we decided not to keep using that because it just, again, was more labor intensive than it needed to be. And last season we had a little 1,500 visits to the park. We can't exactly keep track of the visitors per se, but we know how many visits were there, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, individuals can buy season passes, families can buy season passes for $200, and individuals $100. And then the children's season pass is $45. Nederland youth hockey they have a big chunk of time during the week, right after school, that they hold hockey practices. I think our number one draw is the recreational skate. It's then followed by hockey, and then stick and puck, and then the ice times for adult hockey and women's hockey. And in the open skate, we also have Learn to Skate, which is hosted by one of our founders, and she's an amazing teacher, and people love learning to skate from her. I do too. So what Dallas was saying about getting a GoCo grant, I think, is a fabulous idea. I think that the rink is in need of repairs. The taxing on the north boards, which is what moves in 20 feet when ice happens, not only that hard on the volunteers, but it gets done. It's hard on the boards that were never intended to be outside, and they are the original set of dasher boards that were there to begin with. And so when you look at them when they're set up and the kick plates aren't on, it's almost perforated along the lower third because people keep on drilling through it to apply the so that worries me. Those are very expensive to buy. I think a used set is anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. The Zamboni is a 1984 Zamboni, which keeps on trucking, but things are happening all the time with it. We have people that are very knowledgeable that work on it for us, but things just keep on falling apart. So we don't know how long that is going to keep going for us. And as soon as that dies and it's not able to run for a few days, the ice will not be able to be skated on. It's that important to the resurfacing of the ice that Zamboni is always in operation. So our volunteers run it during the weekends 2 to 3 times, maybe 4 times at the most on the weekends, just to resurface the ice. Sometimes we're just scraping it down. Sometimes we're putting down a little bit more water to make it nice for everybody. The volunteers that we do have that are working there are amazing. I've never been on such good ice in the last 2 years. It's just been phenomenal. The configuration that Dallas was talking about, moving the Zamboni shed, we have thought about that. There's more to it than that because the Zamboni, if anyone's familiar with it, has this big bucket on top that picks up all the snow and the shaving from the ice as it's going around, and we need somewhere to dump that. So in tennis configuration, those boards are further out, and there's 3 courts for tennis. In ice configuration, they pull in. We're able to open the Zamboni shed doors because we can't even get it open when it's in tennis configuration. There's just not enough room there to open up the doors and access the Zamboni during the off season and even like do any sort of repair. So once those boards are switched, we can't get the Zamboni out of the shed. So we have this alley when the boards are in ice configuration, that's where the Zamboni goes down after cleaning off the ice, and that's where the snow dump happens, as well as the removal of the snow from the ice as well. So there has to be that, it's called Zam Alley, that access to somewhere where we can dump the snow as well. And I think that there's 2 problems to keeping it in the tennis configuration. Yes, we'd have to move the Zamboni shed, which is on slab and has all the plumbing in it and everything. But we'd also have to excavate a lot more off of the parking lot. And that's a pretty big embankment there. The other problem that I see with that is that in the later weeks of February, the sun does get high, but the trees around the rink actually give some shade to the ice, and expanding it, that I don't know exactly how many feet it is, 10, 15 feet, whatever it is, it would just add to the melting that's happening on those north boards. So that might not be sustainable. That might not be the best configuration. This year, we've seen even more use of the rink due to COVID. People want to be outside. People need something happy to be around. Disco night is immensely popular. Open skate has been immensely popular. And I don't have the exact number yet, but from last season, like I said, there's over 1,400 visits, and I'm sure that there's a whole lot more this year.
Awesome.
So, what other questions do you guys have for me?
That was really comprehensive, Danette. Thank you so much. That was exactly what we were looking for. It's really helpful I think it's good for us just to get a feel for some of the long-term visions and then just your short-term needs right now. So I think we're all really keen to get the word out there and get you volunteers and get you some funding and well, see what we can do. Does anyone have any questions?
Let me add one.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's Miranda. I would love if you could just email me what you did read so that as we're building the website pieces, we can add that.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. I'll share all this. And the website is, has the schedule on it. We always post that if all sessions are weather dependent, if for some reason the weather is too warm, we cancel it on the website. And that's kind of the go-to page for visitors that are going up. And we try to stress that, like, don't leave your house before you have checked this website to make sure that the session is on for the day. Because it can be on in the morning, and by noon, the ice is too soft to ski on. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that if the town of Ned were to create a Parks and Rec division, I believe that and take over the rink, if that's something that they would want to do down the line, I think that it would be incredibly successful for the town and would save us money in the long run, because what we have to do, and again, Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, but we go out and we get our own insurance for $3,000. So if there were a Parks and Rec program, I know that the rink is covered under the town's insurance, but for some reason it doesn't cover the ice operations. And I would think that it would somehow, and that we wouldn't have to be shelling out $3,000 a year for insurance. And that could be put into the boards or the Zamboni that needs it.
Yeah.
So I do know that they do, so ProSab knows, is that, like Jeanette is saying, they do have to maintain a separate level of insurance. And I know as we embark on Envision 2030, there have been a series of community members who have expressed interest in talking about a Parks and Rec district. And really that conversation is being championed by Jonathan Baumhover, who's the mayor pro tem, who has strong interest in that.
Yeah, we've talked about that for many years. The town has a difficulty because it can't actually do that, right? It has to be sort of like an external entity.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about the town somehow taking over the running of the park and making the people who are volunteers of these nonprofits be volunteers of the town. And I tried to champion that when I was on the town board, and ever since the rink started, because what happens is, look, we're just burning out. Running this park is a huge undertaking, especially the ice season, and it burns people out. And we tried to get the town to take it over. I sort of came up with what I thought was a plan that I thought that the town could accept, which was it really accepts the maintenance and operation of the park as part of the town's program. And then it just, just like you have Nederland volunteers running the community center, you have the same thing happening at the park. And as long as there's somebody who's operating the park, who's a town employee, at the time I was suggesting that the community center management take over the management of the park, and then organize the volunteers this way. But then exactly what Danette is saying, because it's actually both groups. The tennis group has to maintain its own insurance. So what's happening is, because we're running this park as concessionaires. The town owns it. The town owns the physical pieces that sit there. The only thing that the town doesn't own is the Zamboni. But the town owns every other physical thing at that park. But the nonprofits who run it as a concessionaire. So we run it in the summer months, and Nedrink runs it in the winter months. And if we change the model of how this park runs, you would save upwards of $8,000 a year that the nonprofits are shelling out for insurance purposes. It's a matter of just getting town management and town employees to accept a role when, community nonprofits come together to help build something. Once it's built, the town really needs to kind of accept it. I mean, this town has always had a problem with these things. When the DDA decided to build sidewalks, the town refused to do the maintenance and sort of told the DDA they need to do the maintenance. And it's gone back and forth year to year. And I'm not going to, it's not something where you have to point fingers. It's just something we need to try to work through. And we've talked about it many, many years. The reason that the recreation district has taken so long was when it first got put into an idea, it was up against the Nederland Library at the same time. And so everybody said, well, the library is asking people to get taxed, so we better not put a recreation district up there. And Gary Sanfason and I were working on that at the time, and we were like, okay, let's wait a few years because nobody wants to be taxed, twice in 2 years. So, and it just died after that because nobody was championing it. The recreation district is a very good way to do this. But what would happen is the town would kind of have to cede either ownership or give control of the ice rink over to the recreation district to run, even though it's in the town limits.
And that's been a lot of the discussion too, is just our parks in general. All of that would go over into that special district, and so
yep.
It would change the makeup of our public works team. I know Nikki's on the call, and obviously it affects her the most, but she too has expressed interest in just kind of exploring and having those initial conversations. But even if we move forward, I think we're years out, as you're saying. There's just a lot of work that goes into that, but something worth discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazingly, Coal Creek Canyon did it in a very short amount of time. It really takes a community champion who's not a town affiliate. It can't be a trustee, and I don't think it can be a town employee. It has to be somebody who really just wants to see this happen, and they champion it and they put it through. That's how it's been done everywhere else.
So we have been talking about getting another employee in public works that would be dedicated to parks. And if we did have somebody like that, they could maybe act in a coordinator role with the community center. And I think that that could actually be a really good solution to kind of solving this problem, at least in the short term. And that's a path that I'd be really interested in taking. And so I think we still need to push, even though we took the funding for that position out of the latest GoCo grant. I think we still need to find a way to get another parks employee in public works.
I'll throw out one more thing, which I don't know if it's still happening. I doubt it. When we first built the park, the first few years after the park was built, we got money out of Gilpin County, and not an insignificant amount. I'm talking like, I think it was thousands of dollars every year to help run the park. And we stopped doing that because, well, I think Gilpin started having financial issues, but I don't know, and they're probably worse now. So I just put that back out there. I don't think the tennis would benefit that much from it, but the ice people might benefit from it. And part of it was because there used to be an idea that the Gilpin County was going to build its own ice rink at their fairgrounds, and they decided not to because Nederland was building one over here. So the point was, as Gilpin was saying, "Oh, well, we didn't have to build it; they did. So here's $5,000 every year," and it helped run that park. But I don't think that it's happening right now, unless Danette can tell me that you guys are going over to ask for it.
It's very small amount. Past couple years, it's been 500-ish.
Okay, so they're giving you something.
Yeah, but this year I don't think they're doing it at all. They're in terrible.
Gilpin has been decimated.
Yep.
Financially.
Got
it. Oh, I just wanted to throw in there, during that break-in during the summer, they stole the Zamboni keys.
And I will also back up Danette about the Zamboni. I've seen that Zamboni. Well, you know that Zamboni was bought. This park's got great history. That Zamboni was bought in the middle of the night by a volunteer for the park, who just had enough money to buy a Zamboni on eBay one night, and had it trucked to Nederland. And that's how we got the Zamboni. And so that Zamboni has been there for the entire time we've had that park. And when I took my kids over there this holiday break, I was over there and I watched the Zamboni drive by, and I was like, oh man, the poor Zamboni, it's burning oil really badly. It's got a lot of white smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. That's not good. And she's right. Any day it could just give it up. And if it gives it up, the park shuts down. You can't really run it after that.
Yeah.
So I think the town should definitely put budget time. If the town could budget money towards things, that would help. And then as well, if you're really serious about the GoCo, if you're really serious about maintaining what we have, which is this thing that I keep going back to, because I remember somebody put it into like our envisioning documents. And I remember as a board member seeing it all the time, maintain what we have. If we do that, then the town would be going after GoCo grants to help that park get into a place where it's more sustainable for both seasons. Tennis is much easier than ice. And I've done both. I've been out in the middle of the park in the middle of the night making ice for multiple years. So I've seen what happens, and it burns people out. So anything we can do to help the ice community continue that and not let it, burn out the volunteers, because it can be tenuous. It can be that you have 5 really good volunteers who their kids love playing hockey, and they keep the place alive. And then when their kids get older, if their kids stop doing it, you're this close to losing that park. That's how it works. When Danette came in, that was a changing of that guard. And I've seen that guard change probably 3 times, 4 times over the history of the park.
Yeah, there are some incredibly dedicated volunteers, both Zamboni drivers and rink managers that we call them, that maintain the ice. And then there's those rink attendants that, just like Dallas was saying, they are helping us stay open the entire season. And it is a handful of people. This year, for some reason, we've been able to recruit more from the community. Maybe people don't have as much to do. So it's been good. But it is very, very taxing. It's super fun though. You guys ever want to have a good time? You go be a tenant and you get to meet all these people coming from all over everywhere. It's really cool.
That's fantastic. I think one thing that I've noticed just coming up in discussion, sometimes it makes me want to have ProSap have us in with the community center a little bit more, just strengthen some of our ties and communications and link all these amazing community assets together. And the community center being the rec center, the recreation center, it would kind of make sense to have some central location for people to get this information from. So yeah, this is kind of the short-term goal for us, is just to get a frequently asked questions guide up on the town website, and that we can have, help to answer some of these communities' questions. But this is really, really helpful for us. Thank you both for joining. Does anyone have any more questions for these guys?
I did have a question. Sorry if I missed it. Do you guys, either of you, have any kind of membership system or anything like that, where there is like regular payments or a subscription kind of a thing, or how exactly does that work? You do.
Well, we don't really have we have like season passes. That's it. Season pass for tennis used to give people a little bit of an extra bonus that they could get access to the ball machine. So that was the only thing that we were trying to do, was to just incentivize people to pay for the whole season rather than paying every day.
I see.
And then that gave them access to this ball machine and balls that we would provide in baskets so they could use it. We also used to do a lot of programming. So we used to bring so Mary Joyce, actually, who's probably is teaching skating. She also used to be the PE teacher at the elementary school. And Mary Joyce and I used to always organize tennis for the elementary school kids too. And then we also used to do lessons. And we still do lessons. My kids actually are teaching lessons now. So my kids have actually gotten good enough at tennis they can teach, which this community has never really had teachers. So my kids are teaching over there. But in terms of membership, it's just a season pass gets you a little bit better benefits, but that's all.
Yeah, that could be another way that partnering with the community center could help, is that because people are already buying community center memberships, maybe there's a way to kind of roll in season passes to the tennis courts, things like that. Just kind of streamline all of town assets through, one place where you can get everything that you want, and it might make it easier for people to give us a little bit more money.
I didn't mention something that probably I should have. The tennis club, because it became a pickleball club too, tennis group and pickleball, we rent the community center. Okay, so we actually are creating programming for seniors and people, and then we rent the community center and run things there, which also means that we have to get insurance for that. So, so to Danette's point, guys, like, we're kind of doing things in ways that are just not that efficient.
Mm-hmm.
There's really
that sounds like an inverted relationship to me.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, this is just dumb. But I mean, I was on the town board. We could have done things to change this. But I can tell you that even being on the town board, I couldn't affect change and get this, to like change this model. And part of it is just we have to kind of get people out of their old thinking and think a little bit more outside the box.
And I will say the volunteer is not sustainable. It is going to dry up. Like, I think that Nederland youth hockey is going to get smaller and smaller, theoretically, because we used to have a private rink that we could go to up here and would extend the season. But now the ice time, the season is 2.5, 3 months tops. So I think that there might be less of those parents available to be volunteers, and it's just not a sustainable model. Like, we need people who are paid that will take care of us.
I did hear something about that. Could you give us any more background about the youth hockey situation?
Sure. So there was a private residence up here, and it had a very small, like practice size room. It's probably a third of the size of the rink itself. Indoors, fully conditioned, freezer system underneath, and they donated it for the NYHA to use. The husband passed away a couple of years ago, and then an accident on the property, somebody slipping and falling on the ice in a parking lot, led to not being able to use that facility anymore. So unfortunately, their generosity, unfortunately, it's not happening anymore. But I will say, being out at the ice rink with the kids, they get cold sometimes. And this year, the warming huts are not open due to COVID. But they have a great time, and most of the time they're sweating so much that they don't even know that they're cold. So,
thank you.
I believe that property is for sale right now. So if we could scrape together $5 million, we could pivot to that rink.
Yeah, I'd like to say one last thing that when it comes to the Parks and Rec assets that the town has, I would definitely say that this park has been the biggest community builder park that we have. I mean, Chipeta Park is there and it's used, but when it comes to people actually coming together and using a park, the ice rink for sure has built a huge amount of community in this town, and so has the tennis club. When we built that park and started it, there was huge interest in running an ice rink, and there's all kinds of history there. The original boards came from this men's hockey group called Caribou Wind, and they used to put those boards up. They were wooden boards. They used to put them up down, I guess down where Teens Inc. is or so. And then they donated them to the rink to use. That was the first season. It was those wooden boards on top of dirt with the white plastic liners and 25 volunteers out there, putting it all together and flooding it. And over the years, people's families have used that park and their kids have skated there and they do hockey. And some of our hockey players from that park have gone on to play, in really high levels in college and beyond. And still, even today, the kids in this community go there and play hockey. Upstairs in my house right now is a kid who was playing hockey there 30 minutes ago. They came over to say hello. That ice rink is definitely a community builder, and so is the tennis club. So when you look at your assets and you think about what you want to, invest money in GoCo grants and things like that, you should definitely put that park at the top of your list. And be aware that it has its limits and it can go under. Most likely the ice part. I think the tennis part will continue on because it's low maintenance. But the ice part has just it needs people to pay attention. That otherwise we could lose it. And we used to market this town on that ice rink. We used to put out PR materials about the ice rink down in Boulder and across the state of Colorado. It's the largest ice rink in the state of Colorado because it's like Olympic plus maybe. I mean, it's huge. And it's outdoors. And people who play hockey in an indoor rink somewhere else love to come play hockey here. And when we used to have these jamborees that Danette said, those are jamborees where people from all over the state come here to play hockey for the weekend. And our motels and VRBOs are full. And those people are constantly out buying dinner and stuff at those weekends. So it was an economic driver too. And it was something that the town could see happening every time that we had those weekends. So we should definitely be trying to maintain this park. Even if climate change is making it more difficult, a 2.5 month season is still, worth investing the money into.
Absolutely. What an amazing community asset.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for all this very insightful knowledge, both Dallas and Danette. So real quick, I would just appreciate your insight on something. This is going to sound kind of obtuse, being that we're spending a lot of time discussing monetary issues right now. So I want you to imagine this in the very long term. But something we've been kicking around is a pump track on the north side of the parking lot. So I wasn't sure if you're aware of that discussion, but basically we were talking about that swath of trees um, between the entrance and the exit, and yeah, so north side of the parking lot, south side of the road. Um, and yeah, I'd really appreciate both your opinions on whether in the long term, when we're flush with money and everything is uh, all your maintenance costs are not an issue, whether that's something you think would be beneficial to probably more the tennis park, since when the ice park's operational, a pump track wouldn't really be viable. Um,
Yeah, I mean, a little extra background on that is that the ProSab was approached by a local excavating company, High Performance Earthworks, with that proposal in the hopes that they would spend $20,000 creating a bike park. And so they offered to donate $20,000 worth of labor time to create ramps and stuff, for a dirt bike park. And then the town suggested, some town staff suggested that area as appropriate land. So yeah, it's hypothetical at the moment, but that is a conceptual idea that thrown at ProSap. So we would definitely be interested, to hear your take on that.
I'll give you my feedback. That little swath of trees serves to sort of hide the park from the traffic that goes by there, right? There's a community above that would probably appreciate hiding the park. The trees, though, yeah, they don't serve a purpose other than just kind of maintaining a natural area there, and they could be removed. And there's been proposals in the past to remove them and actually enlarge the parking lot, because back in the early days when we had these jamborees for ice and had multiple families from out of town, they were parked up and down the road. So there were proposals to actually just make it a bigger parking lot.
Do you know how many cars it fits in that parking lot?
I think there's a drawing somewhere. There used to be a drawing somewhere that had a drawing of how the parking was supposed to be laid out. I'm guessing the parking could probably hold 25 cars, probably 12 on each side of the kind of alley there. In terms of putting a pump track there, I personally don't think it's. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think that the town should put a pump track in a place that's more accessible for the people who would use it. To put a pump track there means that all the kids who live in Big Springs are going to have to ride their bike down the hill and then back up this other hill to get to it. And I think you'll get you won't get as much use there. Remember that park is on the north edge of town, and it's great for ice and tennis because for the ice it's kind of shaded, and the original place where the ice was supposed to be put, just down by Teens Inc., would have been terrible for ice in the long run. It's just been hit by the sun. But if you're looking for a place for a pump track, I would suggest you put it somewhere down around Teens Inc., where people were proposing it in the past, where it would get a lot more use than if it's over there, kind of tucked away behind two neighborhoods. Obviously, people in my neighborhood, because I live close, would use it, but I just don't think it would get used as much if it's way up here on this side of town.
Yeah, I'm still somewhat new to this conversation and the history of past pump track proposals, but from what I understand, um, there was a lot of pushback from the community at the idea of putting it down by Teens Inc. Just because um, it could potentially eat up what would otherwise be just general use open space. Um, and
I encourage you to continue that, to revisit that. There were a lot of people who were behind the pump track. It just got a lot of negative feedback that it really didn't deserve. You should revisit that. There's plenty of open space everywhere around this town, and that park down there is hardly used for anything that requires open space, and it could be used for many things. You should revisit that. If you were to build a pump track, build it where people, and especially kids, will get access to it. Don't put it up here on the top of the hill, or you're going to have kids from my neighborhood using it and no one else.
I mean, it seems like a northern kind of recreational hub. I think we're calling like that area with the ice rink and the elementary school and the tennis courts and Mud Lake and the future children's nature center up there and all the bike trails. So it seems like an awesome kind of recreational hub on the northern end there. So yeah, we're definitely interested in spreading out some of the recreational opportunities.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, there was actually at the time there was pushback of putting that park where it's at. So people the neighbors nearby didn't want it there, which is, you're going to get that everywhere, right? NIMBY. You put something down, if you put something down by Chipeta Park in that area down there, of course you have less neighbors. I don't think the neighbors would be that against it. People up here actually do a lot of mountain biking, and they would probably be over there using it quite a bit because they ride their bikes in Mud Lake, right? So it's nearby. But I do think you might have some pushback from the new housing development, which is driving by that area every day. And if you kind of make it look a little bit less attractive by taking out those trees, they may not like it. And that is one thing that I would say too about going back to GoCo for a grant. The facility just really could use some love and care. We put those buildings there temporarily to just get things running. Never in our wildest dreams did we think we'd be living in tough sheds for the next 10 years, 15 years. So, and the community that community above that, where somebody's buying $1 million house, it'd be nice if they didn't have to have Smurfville next to.
Yeah, so in terms of the trees, the only real legwork that we've done on this has been to reach out to just a Colorado pump track building company, and their suggestion was actually to leave as many trees as possible because pump tracks need to be occasionally irrigated just to keep the structure. So the more shade, the better. So it wouldn't necessarily be a full raising of that area. But yeah, definitely appreciate your insight on that.
Ask Danette too. Danette, you in here. I mean, from a winter standpoint, what you think?
From the winter standpoint, I would imagine it gives a little bit of shelter from the wind. But usually the wind's not coming from that. Well, that's from the north, so it might be. I know that there was discussion a long time before my time about a cover on the rink, but that would impede tennis's ability for high balls or something. So if a cover were ever to be put on it, and it because of the winds in that area, it might not be able to be as high as it would need to be for tennis. So if the slab could be poured, could a slab be poured in that, clear the trees and put the slab there for tennis and then have a cover on the rink? Like, yeah, this is like unlimited funds that we're playing with right now. But like reconfiguring tennis could be and and the rink could be a thing. And if a pump track was there, that would not be possible.
That's true. That's actually an idea that has been floated, is to build a different ice rink next to the tennis courts. We've done. There's been every single possible idea you can imagine to try to figure out how to make everything work properly over there. And what we have is sort of like something that works for both uses, but definitely strains volunteers to do it. Yeah, I used to stay up at night thinking about these things. We used to think about putting a net over the entire ice rink, the way it's done in Sun Valley, Idaho. They have a system there to put a netting over their entire ice rink. But then you start thinking about the wind we have, and it's like, that's not going to work. I used to stay up at night thinking about how to make ice without having to go and stand over there in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., when it's cold enough to make ice, and not have to do it. And so there's all kinds of crazy ideas people have thought about to do things. The one I was pitching earlier tonight about just leaving the boards in their tennis configuration and making bigger ice, that one I think we all think would work. The problem about the north boards, I still think you'd get more ice. You still would have the north board problem. And I used to go out there. I painted the north boards once, a little section. My kids did a scientific experiment to see if painting the north boards would help. It didn't. There's all kinds of ideas of how to make the park work a little bit better. But I'm afraid that if you did something with a pump track there, you might mess up the park if it ever gets back to the point of doing jamborees and having lots of people parking there. Then it would be we wouldn't have a place for people who are doing ice to have like a big event for a weekend, to be able to park.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Dallas also on the placement and going again and perhaps ignoring that negative feedback that you're getting for putting it down near the teen center, because I think it would get more use from the kids in the community, Old Town, Big Springs, and everywhere else. And then it's visible, and it would get traction from people that are driving through town.
Yeah, again, thank you both for your insight on that. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for attending. We'll definitely work to get some of these questions up on the town and get some links over to you. Does anyone have any further questions? Otherwise, we'll crack on with the Trails Master Plan. Thank you.
Right, thanks, guys. Good to talk to you all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Appreciated.
Thank you both.
Super helpful.
So Jesse, I think we were hoping to maybe let Nikki, if it's okay with everyone, let Nikki go next because she's got to attend to something else. Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
She was going to do tips. I'm like, where is it? Just a quick.
Well, because you said I can go next, I'll turn my camera on for a minute. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
So I have a very small update on tips on wayfinding from Chris Pelletier. And I am merely reading what he told me to say. So don't kill the messenger if you feel like that. So Chris communicated with the property owner of the Wolf Tongue Square, which for those of you who don't know, Wolf Tongue Square is where New Moon Bakery and some of those other little shops there, the Silver Stem, and I think there's an accounting office. And anyway, so he's communicated with Jeff. And Jeff is interested in working with the town to add bicycle parking on the corner of his property. There would potentially be space for 20 bicycles. And we say partnering because he would be the one that would do the concrete work, and then perhaps the town would provide the bike racks. He will be meeting with Jeff next week, and will update you guys on the plan from that. and he will also be creating a newspaper article. Eventually that'll go and along with informing the public on the entire TIPS project. There's no real changes to the TIPS project itself, other than that little update with Jeff. So he is planning on reaching out on schedule for future wayfinding meetings. He would like ProSab to think about the gateway sign and what you would like that gateway sign to be. There is I guess some kind of the exact location of that sign has not been determined yet, but he would like ProSab to think about what you would like to see on that sign. And he will communicate with you guys at a later time.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
Nikki,
Yes.
2 questions about the sign. In terms of what we would like to see on the sign, are you talking about images and verbiage?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've so far just said that we would like a version of the trail, the Nederland map, area trails map on there, the priority.
Great. Anything else?
No, we'll definitely stay in touch with that and keep up to date.
Awesome. And on the last little blurb, I would like to say that I actually agreed with Dallas and Danette that I think that we should continue to explore other places for that bike park, for the pump track, however we look at it, where it would get more use and parents possibly wouldn't have to drive their kids to go use it, or if they're doing that, they're already going to one spot anyway, and all those things can be in one area. That's just my opinion.
I mean, none of us are really championing it, so we're just doing what we can.
No, I agree. The points that Dallas, I think, brought up about, the controversy, and there was a certain faction that were focused on it, and I think we've moved beyond that so that we could revisit the original location with a better understanding and clarity for that.
Yeah, being that there's the potential of a significant donation to make it happen, that might also change sentiment as well.
The main issue at the time, Daniel, was that it would cut down the size of the ballpark, and people involved in the music festivals, I believe that was one of their main concerns, taking area away. And
installing asphalt in a natural open space just didn't go well with the community.
Yeah, but I think some of the opposition maybe has softened, and I think we've moved on from some of the contentious issues surrounding it, so that it would be worthwhile to revisit it in the future.
Visit town lands. I don't think the community is going to be okay with putting it on Barker Shoreline ever.
I wonder if we pitch it like the tennis ice park, where it's a pump track in the summer and a frozen dead guy coffin race track in the winter. Maybe. Probably not.
I mean, I just have to be open and honest with folks. I'm not sure I personally am that keen on that location for a pump track. So I don't even know if we're that much agreed on this call, let alone in the community as a whole.
What location?
Near the Barker shoreline.
Yeah, no, I'm totally still opposed to it. So you're not.
Yeah, eventually having that as a large field, I think would definitely be a better use of that space.
Yeah, I just think we really did learn from that experience that keeping that multi-use for the whole community and not for single user use is the way to go.
Perhaps we might look at Chipeta Park as a possible location.
Yeah, even that would be more. I'm sure that would go down as a better
Less
look.
contentious, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
there's it's still a discussion for the future. There is possibilities.
There is, and I haven't heard back from Jesse. I don't know. Have you, Dan, heard anything from anyone? They don't seem like overly eager to get moving on it. So,
Well, it's winter time. We're in
yeah,
the middle of a pandemic, so.
Yeah, and I think
just
they're
to
also.
email his proposal, he hasn't managed to do that in 3-4 months. So,
Yeah.
I think that as everyone knows, construction has been extremely busy during the pandemic. Everyone's finally doing all the construction projects that they wanted to do. So it sounds like he's pretty busy.
yeah. Great. That was a fantastic little quick update there. Should we skip on to Trails Master Plan with Brian and Eric? I know you guys have been looking at that a little bit, some developments and maybe our annual schedule for that, and see what the plan is.
Brian
Sure.
has been the real champion there. I've not done my homework.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, no worries. Well, so Eric and I got together and we reviewed some of the draft kind of questions and things that we put together that we might want to put into a survey. I put that into a survey that I'll just briefly show everybody here, and then I'll send out a link later to folks so that everyone can look at it in their own time. I think this is the one I want to share. Yeah. So this is a preview of the survey. It's not live yet. And I think the best way to capture your feedback is either for you to send me an email, Eric and myself an email with any feedback you have, or if it's more extensive than that, I'm happy to hop on the phone and talk to people. But you can see when you launch this page, it's going to give you this little dialog box that says, hey, this is just a preview. It's not real. We're not collecting any data. When you kind of put that away, you can read through it, and feedback is welcome on the wording, on the questions, on the wording within the questions, on the order of the questions, anything you feel like giving feedback on. You can either comment in the site itself and write a piece of feedback here that will eventually make its way to me, or you can, as I mentioned, write me an email or propose that we jump on the phone to discuss. But in essence, what we've done is we've introduced what the Trails Master Plan is all about. We try to get a baseline understanding of whether or not people are happy with the way the trails currently are configured in town, what they primarily use these trails for at the moment. And then we jump into some questions about some things that might be changed about the Netherlands trail system. So some of these are kind of multi-select questions where you could say, hey, I do 3 of these things, or I don't do any of these things at all. Some of them are kind of ranking type questions where we might say, I think the most important thing is to increase the variety of trails, and the second most important thing is to expand the size of the trail network. And people can drag and drop these things into the order that they prefer. I should note with most of these questions, the order that the options appear in is randomized. So if you see, for example, something that you think is important down here, but it shows up at the bottom of the list when you first see it, it's not necessarily going to be the bottom of the list for everybody who sees it. It's just that there's a randomization going on. There's a couple of open comment boxes here for people to fill in the gaps of things that we didn't think about. And also just to kind of, if people want to essentially tell us what's on their mind, they're welcome to do that as well. None of the questions are mandatory, so people can just skip right ahead to anything. It's basically 2 pages right now, and it's a survey that would probably take about 4 to 5 minutes to complete. If we go on to the second page, This is where we try to learn a little bit more about the person who's responding in an anonymous way. This just to give probably a better understanding of what types of people are asking for what types of things to do with the trail master plan, so that we make sure that we're covering all the different community members and all the different constituencies, and we kind of understand, oh, for some people who fall into a certain kind of demographic, they're interested in these things, and other people who fall into a different demographic are interested in other things, to kind of bring back to this broader forum so we can discuss some of the things we've learned.
Yeah.
So just basic questions here: age, sex, how people identify race or ethnicity, and again, these are all multi-select, and people can choose to answer or not answer, or they can enter their own answers. And then at the bottom of the page is kind of try to get an indication of where people live in town. And this is a kind of cool thing that I just discovered was possible. You can click on this map to say this is where I live. So you can say I'm over here in the Big Springs neighborhood. And you tap on that. And then when we get the results, what we end up seeing is something called a heat map, which will show us kind of where most of the people are who clicked on this thing. And of course, this is really for town of Nederland residents, so it doesn't include a lot of the areas outside of the town of Ned. So actually, that's a question or a point that I just thought of now, is maybe we should give people the opportunity to say, I don't live on this map, because there will be a few people like that.
Brian, is there some way to expand the map to include Ridge Road and Eldora and Magnolia Road?
Or just an extra verbal question for
Yeah. So in answer to that question, yes, but we can both, if we decide to, and we think it's a good idea to expand the map, we can do it that way, or we can just let somebody enter in where they live if they're not represented on the map itself. So that's kind of it so far. It's short and sweet. I've bounced this off my wife already, who's one trail user in town, and she proposed a couple of other changes that I haven't had a chance to make yet. But one of them would be maybe another use of a map whereby people can identify the trails that they use most frequently already. And I'm not sure how we would do that technically, but we might be able to indicate kind of different zones or something, and people can say, for the most part, I use the trails over in zone A, or I use the trails over in zone B. So that's something I might try to figure out how to do as well.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So what I'd like is people. I'm going to send out the link, and if people can give me and Eric and others who kind of jump on the subcommittee some feedback on the types of questions we're asking, the way we're asking the questions, any options we didn't think about already. Feel free to throw it at us. It's early days yet. So the goal here would be to get this survey kind of finalized and get it out to the public sometime before spring happens. And then we would use the results of this survey to formulate the types of conversations we might want to have in a sort of semi-in-person community feedback session. And when I say in-person, it would probably end up being a virtual town hall kind of feedback session, because nobody's going to be in the same place at the same time for several months. And then following that second round of community feedback, I think that's when we would probably have enough data points to start comparing these new answers to previous Trails master plans we've had, to figure out kind of what the future master plan might look like in ways that we might want to amend things that we've thought about in the past. So that's my piece. Eric, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think the survey is looking really amazing, and I think it's going to be hopefully really effective. It looks really easy to use. Hopefully we get a lot of feedback. And the only other thing that I was really supposed to do was, craft some kind of mission statement that we can all ratify as ProSab for what exactly the goal of this is overall. And that way the community has some framework for approaching the survey and kind of understands where we're coming from. So I think once that's crafted and we maybe can approve that next time around, next month, and finish up this survey, put it all up on the town website under a new header of Nederland 2021 Trails Master Planning or something like that, then we can get moving.
And I should say, Jesse sent through a bunch of files as well that I haven't had a chance to review yet, but I think that that's those are the sort of historical master plans and stuff that you sent, right, Jesse?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just in the ProSap Google. If you just, I think you just log into like .drive.com, it'll take you to your Google Drive, and then it's on. Yeah, there's a ProSap folder there.
You've invited us to that folder. Okay.
Yeah, I should have invited it, I think now. But yeah, no, I totally agree with your wife's feedback. Yeah, frequently used trails, I think, is a big deal, and then the most desired trails that don't exist. Some way to get that into figures.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And yeah, I think it'll be fun trying to figure out how to do that. If people can draw something to say like this, I'd love to connect this place to that place or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, that's a neat idea.
This is we're stretching. So offline, I was talking to Miranda by email about how we're going to do this survey. So this is on SurveyMonkey, which is a site that you can host free surveys, but once you start putting interesting functionality into it, they want to charge you money. So we'll figure out whether or not the town has the budget to pay for the fancy capabilities that we're talking about.
One more question we might want to put on there is one that kind of indicates the amount of time somebody spends on trails.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
Mm.
Cool. Yeah, this is exactly the right kind of feedback. It's that I know for sure this isn't perfect yet, so love to hear more about what everybody thinks would be good to add, good to change. Lay it on me, and we'll kind of revise this draft survey and circulate it. And yeah, I think timing-wise, it would probably be a good idea, maybe if Eric and I were in a position to kind of come back to the broader ProSab during our February meeting and say, hey, we think this is probably the final draft of this survey. Everybody give us a thumbs up.
Great. I know one of my jobs for this last time was just to try and dig what I can about the original trails map. And no, it's not been happening. So somewhere deep in the town archives, I found a document that stated that the previous trails map had been created by an outside entity. So they'd hired, it was like part of another plan, and then my computer crashed and I've been able to, I haven't found it again. So yeah, so the closest I've come to getting a Google Earth type satellite image overlaid with the property lands, the plat lines, is through Boulder County Property Search, just through the assessment search. And even then, it's still really low resolution. So I wonder if we could contact them, like either via Fruitown or just contact the Boulder County Clerk's office, almost to see if we could get a higher resolution of just that SAP map with the plat lines. So that's all I've got.
Yeah, definitely. I bet we could, and I imagine that would go best coming through Miranda or somebody who's officially affiliated with town.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Okay, do we happen to know who the right contact might be? So you think it's Boulder County Assessor's Office?
Well, that's where I'm also even thinking maybe Lisa Dell could assist, and so I think I might even want to start with him since he's local, and then if he's not the right person, he'll send me in the right direction.
Awesome.
Cool. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great, because some of the challenges I just from hearing you talk that I imagine into will say, well, how much time do you spend on the trails? And on this trails map, there's roads identified as trails, so it's a little tricky.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Anything closer to like to some sort of better source of truth of the trails as they exist now would be awesome. Because right now the one that's on the survey is just one that I stole from the.
Yeah, and it looks really good, Brian. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, that looks awesome. That'll be very useful.
Awesome.
Information.
All right, well, so there's the link in the chat. I'll send out the link as well to the email, and folks hopefully can get a chance to look at it and let me know what they give me some details. And seriously, feedback is super welcome, especially constructive feedback. So don't feel bad about possibly hurting my feelings.
Thank you, Brian. Yay.
All right.
You're getting stuff done tonight. Awesome. So next we do have the Resilient Communities update. This should be pretty quick. We just presented to the board, the BOT, on Tuesday night about the updates to the GoCo Resilient Communities grant. It's basically the same. I mean, you've already heard all the stuff we did. We've stripped it down taken out all the Gershio field references, irrigation, all that kind of thing. So it really is just priorities now. There's extra in there. The current grant application is for 202,549, so 202,549. I would really like us to get it below 200,000. I just feel like that will make it way more competitive. So I was going to suggest to you all tonight, I mean, I've got the budget in front of me. I'm not sure if Miranda will be able to pull it up. But we've got the two things that I would recommend probably cutting out of all these things are some of the interpretive signage. We have 10 signs at the moment on here at $2,000 a piece. So even if we could just take 2 of those signs out or more, it would get us down. Well, 3, you'd need to take out 3 of those signs to get it down to below 200,000. Awesome. There you go. So yeah, I think I think six interpretive signs would be plenty. That would be one place.
So there,
Yeah,
you telling me once I did the 6, it took us to 194, just shy of 95.
Yeah, 194. Yeah, if anyone has any other ideas.
Sounds like the best place to me. The only other question I had was whether or not the number of ADA parking spots was based on some kind of requirement, or like where the number 4 came from. I didn't know if it was based on anything because they seem expensive.
I don't believe that if it is based on like a calculation for ADA requirements. I think it's just that is another area in which it could be removed. I think we'd at least need to have 2. I believe I can triple check that with Nikki tomorrow. She's kind of the ADA parking guru, but I do believe that is another area you could adjust.
Cut the ADA parking spaces from 4 down to 2. What about taking out one of the dog waste stations instead of 5 having 4?
So we still are in conversation with the city of Boulder about those bathrooms, and while we're not necessarily tying it to the grant itself, they did express that doggy waste stations was a big priority of theirs.
Yeah.
So I recommend not removing any of those because they really wanted to even highlight it in the narrative.
Like if we really had to take another thing out, I would take out like 2 picnic benches.
See, I would be opposed to that because as an older person, when I go somewhere, I really want to have places to sit.
Yeah, it's just a matter of is 10 good for, because it's just the Barker Meadow area. Is that?
Well, we're talking about Barker Meadow area. We're also are we talking about the waterfront trail though too? Benches along the trail, or are we just talking about in the park area itself?
Well, Jesse, you're talking about picnic tables, right? Not
just
benches.
Picnic tables.
Oh, picnic tables. Oh, I thought you were talking about benches. I'm focused on benches.
Yeah,
cut the picnic tables down. Like maybe to 6.
Yeah, 6 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
Even
but
that.
Don't cut out the benches.
7 in the middle. I mean,
yeah,
you're even lower. I don't know if the goal, Jesse, is to be just slightly under 200, or if you want to be significantly under.
Let's take a look. What are we at now then? What are we at now? 191. Can you go down a little smidge? 187. That looks. I mean, I feel better about that. Because what I was looking at, I'll tell you guys too. It was the I don't have any of this facts in front of me. So there was 47 applicants last time, and 27 of them. Oh no, there was 48 applicants last time, and 28 of them didn't get chosen. So most likely, all those 28 applicants, including us, will be reapplying, and they're going to be if they all stick to their previous amounts, they will be applying for 17 million, over 17 million in
Wow.
grant allowances. And what GoCo have left to give out is 1,200,000. So we're all applying, like this, there's a lot of people applying for now a really small amount of money. So I think that, yeah, knocking it down just makes it that little bit expensive.
Yeah, I mean, in with that in mind, I think, knocking it down even more, like really just the absolute essentials. We can always add.
It just has to be.
We can always add another picnic table. We can always maybe pave another parking spot.
We can always add picnic tables, yeah.
And signage and
Signage. I feel like picnic tables and signage should be the first things to get cut down out of this. So.
Yeah.
So can you confirm how many parking spaces we were adding into that area? Because Nikki's saying you need to have one ADA per every 26 spots. And I definitely know we don't have 100 over there. But do we have more than 52?
No.
No.
I didn't think so.
No.
It would be meant to drop ADA down to.
Okay.
Okay.
ADA to 2. How about like picnic tables 6 or 5?
That sounds good.
6?
5 or 6. Coin
6,
toss.
How about 6 picnic tables, 6 interpretive signs at least. That's on
Yeah.
187. And then we can really at least argue that we really have stripped it down to the best of our ability.
Are you good with this? Can I start moving some numbers around? Does this look good to everyone?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, does that look good to you, Chris, and you, Dan and Brian?
Yeah, that looks good.
It seems fine. I think that the comment that was already made is still a useful one. Like if there's anything that seems like a nice to have as opposed to a must have that we can add at a later date, probably good to strike it out just to make ourselves more competitive and less expensive.
Yeah. One more sign. Should we not pull one more sign off? They're 2,000 each. We've got they're at 2,000 each. That would have us 5 signs.
5 signs seems like a lot of signs to me.
Yeah. How about 4 signs?
Yeah.
I mean, without knowing where they're going exactly or what's going to be on them, it's hard to say. But,
3 signs.
Imagine if we had 4. That's 1 for north, east, west, and south, and however people might be getting into this park area. But yeah, I think that's the kind of stuff we can
What about just one really big sign?
like a billboard? I think that'd be really attractive.
On billboard.
Yeah, I'd be fine going down to 3 as well.
Or we can make it mobile, put it on wheels and move it around.
I mean, the DDA are also looking at signage right now, so that maybe will be addressed.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 signs has a sort of logic to it in that we might have kind of an entrance on either side and then something along a trail in the middle.
Thank you, Miranda. Sorry.
Well, there's 3 entrances into town, so 3 wouldn't be a bad number because it would hit every major entrance into town.
And pretty much every park too.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 would be fine.
Yeah, that's looking. I feel better about that. Okay. We'll keep pressing on. So that has to be, we're submitting that on February 2nd, and then we will hear back from GoCo March 12th.
I do have a question. I have a comment on the narrative. In the sections, I think it was, in the first section, and then I think there was somewhere else where it talks about the effects for young and old. I think that wherever that phrase comes up, it should really be beefed up. Should be beefed up. It should be emphasized. Like with the trails, the importance of having them accessible for all ages, especially older adults.
Yeah.
And people with disabilities. Just really beef it up, make it real specific, and emphasize it.
Yeah. So where it says P in front of elderly and young families, I'll change it to particularly or especially.
Yeah.
For starters.
The what do you call those? Like the buzzwords, accessibility and.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like this time around we've got a really compelling case, and if they don't give us it, then boo to them.
There are also two instances where the phrase numerous studies is used, and just my academic sensibility really wants at least one citation on each of those, just because anyone can say numerous studies say anything, and without saying at least one study that says that, feels like a throwaway.
Or just take it out. Who cares?
Right. I mean, I wouldn't mind just saying, open space is correlated to community resiliency in response to natural disasters, rather than numerous studies say. I don't know, just stronger just to state it.
Yeah.
More concise is always better, I think. Perfect.
Yeah, instead of saying disproportionately affects marginalized residents, change that to say who those marginalized residents are, which is older adults, people with disabilities.
Those lacking support, particularly elderly and families.
People of lower income, and people of underrepresented ethnicities. I mean, all that is completely true.
Yeah.
Make them feel like if they don't give us the money, they're hurting old people and people of color.
And old people of color.
Right. I mean, just based on the feedback they gave, it just seemed like they didn't feel bad enough for us to give us the grant last time around. And so I think we really need to stress that this is, not just for our convenience.
It does seem a little arbitrary. I was rereading some of their awarding, and they awarded one to a campsite development. Yeah. So a brand new campsite to be built because people didn't have enough camping spaces, and also for a gathering pavilion for people to gather outdoors. So it's just it doesn't make sense.
Well, also, I think Eric, in the bot meeting last night, I think you brought up a good point about. I think it was in the bot meeting about the Envision meeting, about who their focus seemed to be on, and it seemed to be on large urban areas. So. I don't want to offend anybody, but it was a lot of the money was focused on large urban areas where white people congregate and recreate, as opposed to small towns and neighborhoods of diversity. And I think you made a really good point with that, Eric.
And one of the things they did say in their justification was that they admitted to inordinately privileging those kinds of projects in the last round. And they have stated, without making any, too many commitments, they said that they're hoping to have more of a focus on rural communities in this last funding, in this last cycle. So hopefully they make good on that promise. And
then using those words, I think we have to those words into our narrative. Just use their words and incorporate it into that first question.
Yeah, I've definitely tried to do that this time. Just use like snippets from successful grants and into the word edge too.
Well, just lift their words exactly and paste them in.
Yeah.
One more little thing in the first paragraph, should we just say Nederland is situated in western Boulder County at 8,200 feet elevation? I know that might be nitpicky, but
no, I like it. Be nitpicky. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, just say it's a rural western Boulder County mountain community.
I like that rural western Boulder.
Rural.
Exactly.
But I also
It's a rural mountain community.
We've made a point now to note that it's a front range community that is being, the usage that we're seeing is increased because of Boulder and Denver,
Right.
and yet we are a rural, like underserved community in the mountains.
Yeah.
Well, a way to put it is that we are a rural community seeing urban usage.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Heavy urban usage. We're at the point where we have to milk every word now.
Yeah, no, every word is so valuable. So that's really great. I love it.
Do the words team sports appear anywhere in this narrative anymore?
No.
Yeah, good. We just need to make that totally not a thing.
Yeah, there you go. Transportation. Sportation. Yeah, but do if you have time, just print it out and go over with a fine tooth comb and just even just tiny little things like that about elevation, and it does make it more readable for sure.
I'll try to send you a Word doc version with track changes on, so you can see that. And because I can't find it again, but I found a sentence fragment in there before then. I can't seem to find again. Maybe it's got fixed. I don't know, but.
Yeah, no, it happens. It stops seeing the words after a while. It's just a pattern.
When is the grant due, or when are we planning?
It's due on the 2nd.
Okay, so you
February?
Yes. So
so this is our final?
This is it. This is the final for this year, and we can move on to other stuff. And
we don't have to bring it before the board?
That was it on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, as long as we don't substantially change the narrative, we're fine.
Yeah, just minor.
Grammar edits and things were okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how much money did we eliminate? I think we did really good.
Almost half.
From last round, almost half.
Wow.
Yeah. Because it was at 300 something last time.
Okay, so if they don't give it to us, then we should bring a discrimination suit against Coco.
We're too poor to develop our parks, but we're rich enough to bring frivolous lawsuits against.
We'll get our Netherlands flags and we'll go storm GoCo.
We'll represent ourselves in court. I'll save some money.
Just kidding, GoCo. Okay, we're moving on. So actual schedule we have, and that is just quick, just to get a feel for what our plans are. So we've got the GoCo submission February 2nd. The decisions are in March. We're going to hope to quiz out the trail survey, maybe at March or April.
For sure. I bet probably before that, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tentatively do March then, and then.
I think March is probably good.
Okay. Yeah, and then we've got one more meeting to go over it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? I mean, I definitely would like us to tentatively have another date for a pretty noxious weed pull, maybe around Earth Day or kind of early April, May, maybe May, probably when stuff starts, end of May, start of June, when stuff starts to melt out.
It's just to plug Wild Bear, where I'm on the board. They do a thing called Wild Earth Day every year around Earth Day. So if we wanted to team up with them, maybe do a child-friendly noxious weed pull or something like that, that's an option for us.
Yeah,
That'd be nice.
maybe get a table up with them and hand out some of the surveys too.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, we had some hardworking kids on the last noxious weed pull. Worked out pretty okay.
It did.
Cool. I'll have about that. I think that a lot of the in-person events that Wild Bear traditionally does every year haven't been happening due to the COVID. So I'm not sure if there will be an official Wild Earth Day in-person celebration, but I think that some kind of socially distanced thing, like a noxious weed pull where people are not near others, could be an interesting way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt pretty safe doing it last time.
Yeah, cool.
Let's do that. All right.
How about a noxious people pull?
Didn't that happen a couple days ago?
Oh, I guess it did. Yeah.
Right. Envision 2030. Who wants to be on the Envision 2030 committee?
Well,
Attachment already.
Clarification. So we do have 14 members on our Envision 2030 board, but the Board of Trustees did express an interest in still having a liaison from ProSab and SAB, which were the two boards missing. Now, Atashna was appointed to the board. Atashna had originally stated she did not want to serve as the liaison role. I don't know if Tashna, if you've changed your mind or if there's another interest.
Amanda, serving as a board liaison and serving as a community member, what would be for me, what would be the differentiation?
I mean, really, I think what the Envision Committee would then look for is for you to be able to communicate maybe SAP's position on certain goals and objectives as they were developed. And so you could always bring them back to ProSab to gain that information. And then obviously when we broke out subcommittees, it would be important for us that the ProSab liaison served on any subcommittees that kind of have a crossover into ProSab's world.
So I'd be making, I would be putting together a report to the ProSab board on what's happening.
And then you I'll obviously always be there so I can help you. But I think, yes, it would be, the goal is to have those liaisons be able to pull the information back. And at some point in time, we will want the crossover between ProSab's goals and Envision 2030's goals. And you would really serve as that liaison to make sure those were represented in the Envision 2030 document.
Okay, well, considering there's like 14 community members, I'll do it.
Unless Dan or Brian or Jesse want to, but it looks like you have thumbs up across the
No,
board.
I think that we should ban Jesse from taking on any more volunteer work.
He's trying to build boundaries, and it's great. I'm loving it. So. I mean, I think Atashna, again, I'm also will be just as much a part of it, so I can help you with kind of communicating things back and forth.
Okay.
So if support, I think it does make sense for you to be not only a community member, but that liaison as well.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Cool. Thanks, Atashna.
Thank you, Atashna.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
And on that note, we have just Miranda brought up that we are supposed to be talking about chair and vice chair positions annually, I guess. And I did check; it's in our bylaws that we have a discussion in June or July. It was July we discuss roles. I mean, I'm obviously happy to continue on as chair at least till my term is up next year. But it would be awesome to have. I mean, and you can all nominate if you want. If you would like that role too, please let me know. Or if you would like to be vice chair too.
Did you say your minutes did say that you were in June? Because we're having this debate kind of across all the boards of like.
Yeah, I had a look at the bylaws. It says July.
Okay. So you can wait until July, but to Jesse's point, there isn't really a co-chair or vice chair. It might be something to consider now.
Let me know too if you'd be interested.
And that would entail basically someone to run the meeting when Jesse's not present. Is that the role of a vice chair?
I could miss a meeting.
No, you still can't.
Yeah. Actually, I was interested, Miranda. I was interested in this, if the SAB bylaws were the same as ours, just out of curiosity, and I couldn't find their bylaws anywhere online.
Yeah, that's a weird thing too. And so Melody and I were talking about how there were bylaws back in the day, but no one knows where they are, and they're trying to track them down. So basically, the plan is to ensure that all boards and commissions have a little bit more universal bylaws and are a little bit more consistent with one another.
Yeah.
And we wanted to tackle that last year, and it just didn't work out. And so the plan is before June, when terms end, to have bylaws that are concrete and ideally mirror each other, so we're treating each board and commission similarly. And we'll be bringing that to ProSab probably in the next month or two, just an initial draft of advisory board.
Oh,
So, long story short, that
sorry.
is trying to find bylaws, but we are also in that similar kind of boat with SAB of when did they do their chair and vice chair, and you know who's ending when, and we're just trying to sort those pieces out.
Yeah, that was my thought. As soon as you said that, I was like, it would make sense to have all the boards kind of, a cohesive, universal bylaw.
That is the goal, and so it really was, not only that, but also looking at the Board of Trustees, their bylaws and policies and procedures need some tweaking. It didn't fall on our radar last year, but it is a plan for within the next 6 months.
Okay.
So just to verify, we have to make the decision on chair and co-chair by June or July?
We'll stick with our current bylaws, so July sounds like, but there is no vice chair now.
Okay.
So I think if someone's interested in the role, it would be great if someone stepped in, but we could also wait to do it all in July.
Go ahead. Yes, to step in. It's awesome. You get a nice title. You get to write agendas sometimes.
With very little responsibility.
Go on, Dan. Brian.
I can tell Dan is super tentative.
Go on, Dan.
I don't know yet. Let me think about it. Brian, though.
No, I liked your answer. I will also think about it.
Atashna's good at nominating people too, so I'll get her to do that.
I'm pretty sure I saw her cat raise its paw, so that may have been a nomination.
Thank you all. That was really, really productive, really helpful. We've got a lot to go on.
All right.
I guess, can we just make sure that we start kind of in a more, how do I want to say it, in a more kind of concerted and structured way, continue on this board talking about the ideas that Dallas and Danette presented and sort of those issues, and make sure that we start coming up with some solutions, maybe start brainstorming some ideas of what we might bring to the BOT level.
Yeah.
So that I can also start advocating to the BOT on behalf of however we kind of feel we should best pursue what seems like kind of a situation that does need to be resolved sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk to Miranda about getting a page on the ProSab, either via the ProSab site or just in the town about recreational assets, like a page, and then have a little paragraph about each of those organizations with a link to their website, really information. That's what I see as one.
Yeah, I think it's very important. One of the important things that was brought up from the discussion with Randy Lee and Dallas is how historically, among many issues of the town archives lacking continuity is that it's extremely important that what's come out of this discussion with the nonprofits, as Eric said, to be continued as an agenda item so that it's continued to a resolution. From the things that Randy and Dallas were saying, a lot of things have been discussed over the years, but then over time, they didn't go anywhere and there's no record of them. And I think this is an opportunity that's been presented to us to really start making the board minutes and agendas something that will be historically viable for future board members. That it's there, they can find it, and it's not every 4 or 8 years. Things are constantly being revisited with the answers of, well, I don't know, or I don't know where it is, or I don't know what happened, or there's nobody around, which has historically, and I've been here a long time, has been the norm. And we have an incredible opportunity with an incredible town staff to really change the norm to something better moving into the future. So when we set our priorities and goals, these things have to be part of that to a resolution.
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing because I feel like we didn't get a lot of the answers about the skate park in regards to construction materials and the reasoning why, you know, we can't allow bikes on that. We didn't make any headway, so we're just gonna have to
Well, we did make some headway in that we found out that there are a lot of there's a lot of historic information on papers in boxes that Randy has. So the next step would be at some point having, I don't know what it's called in academia, but it's like having researchers go through those boxes and cull the information into a sensible format for future use.
right.
There's probably a lot of documents that aren't really necessary, but at least we know where the documents are.
Send him those requests in a written format and just some really straightforward kind of concrete questions like what is the PSI of the concrete that, you know, the skate park is constructed with, just really black or white questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the coping material made out of? Where is it sourced from? How often is it replaced? Like that kind of thing.
Well, there's also something else that he had said about, you know, the something about signage for and recognizing their donors, and they ran out of money, and I think it's really a disservice, and that's been 10 years ago. And it's my belief that these nonprofits, some of them are self-sustaining and they go on forever. And some of them, they come together for a reason. And then the reason why they came together has been accomplished. And so then some of them just die out, or they metamorphosize into something else. And in the case of some of these nonprofits in the town, the only thing that could happen is for the town, for these recreational assets to become a part of the town's responsibility or a special district, a Parks and Rec district. However, what to me, what seems in my ignorance, what seems like has been going on is that the Netherlands Public Works Department has been taking on all the responsibility for maintenance and repair. And in my ignorance, that doesn't seem that that's the responsibility of the town, since it is not a town asset, it's a nonprofit. So it can't be both. The town should not have the responsibility for maintenance and repair. The nonprofit should have that responsibility as part of their job as that specific nonprofit. And if they dissolve or want to change into something else, then it's either a district or it becomes town. And either way, there needs to be a paid coordinator or a paid director or whoever with volunteers.
Yeah,
Right now it's in a gray area.
part of what makes it so complicated is that they are town-owned assets, right? That nonprofits don't actually own the assets; they're only the operators, and so they're sort of operating these things on behalf of the town, and yet the town also then charges them sometimes for certain things. So it's a very strange relationship that
Yes,
I think
it
really
is.
needs to be sorted out.
Yes, it's extremely confusing, and yeah, it does need to be delineated, because ever since the assets were built, then it changed into this gray area. It's like pickup sticks, the old game of pickup sticks. Like who wants this one? Who wants this piece? Who wants to do that piece? And while volunteers are incredible, and most things can't exist without volunteers, there still has to be some very clear delineation of responsibilities and financial sustainability.
And talking financial businesses, what would be a useful way to proceed forwards for ProSab then? I mean, I just think keeping track of the three different the assets, the non-profits, and then financially, I mean, Parks and Rec is not considered to be part of the community centre budget, and yet that is a recreational centre. So the parks budget is 15,000 a year, and we're considered separate to all these other parks assets. So if we can go through and kind of nail down what the financial annuals look like, incoming, outcome for all these different groups.
Well, then how ProSab interfaces with it? Back in the day, and I think this might have been in the 80s or 90s. Okay, the town didn't have a town administrator. And then it did, and we went through a hell of a lot of town administrators. It was a very bizarre chapter in Netherlands history. But at one point, the town hired a grants writer. And his name was Jim Phoenix. He was like the town astrologer too, and it was really something else. But he was hired to bring money into the town. His sole purpose was researching grants for certain things to keep the town going, keep the town viable. And I think he had a 3-year contract, and then he left town, went to Northern California to grow pot or something. But I think the town really needs a grant writer to research things like you're talking about, Jesse, for like financial sustainability of like ProSab, because we're in a particular position where our assets are not like SAB, you know, their assets are nature.
And they paid grant writer.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. SAB really offers us the model going forward, the success of the sustainability coordinator position there, which is grant funded, right?
Yeah.
But the success of that position and that it has been working out, I think, is a good precedent that's been set. And I think now ProSab can look to move in a similar direction to have somebody who's hired part-time, to begin with probably, and paid to be the Parks and Rec coordinator and work with Public Works, work with the community center, be the liaison between these entities, manage, all of these resources and write grants to sustain them. And so that's a position that I think could be really, really valuable for us.
Have you heard? I've never heard of any grants that fund parks grant writers.
Yeah, but I mean, we just have to find a creative way to frame it,
Yes. Because we never heard of grants for sustainability coordinator.
There are so many grants for sustainability right now. They're just throwing money to say sustainability.
But I don't think it's impossible to find some of the money in the town's own budget as well. So I think there are ways.
Yeah.
It's not like we're financially that hard up. So we're doing well.
Well, the impression I get is that while the town might not be financially hard up, it's very hard pressed.
Yeah, but I think human resources are more at a premium almost than financial resources sometimes. So there might be a way.
Okay.
Especially if we have a clear view of what exactly it is that we want, how exactly much it would cost, what kind of qualifications this person would have, and examples of how this might be done in other towns to sort of back it up and show that it has a track record of success. By the town spending a little bit of its own money might end up getting much more in return.
Much more,
so it could be a
yes.
very good investment if we do our research and we do our homework. So it's just up to us really to figure it out.
Great. You all right?
I'm dying. I've been up since 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's been a long day. So, on that note, 9:25, let's say. Call it. Meeting is adjourned. Well done. Thank you, everybody. That was really productive.
Thanks all. It was a very successful meeting.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
See ya.
Later, everybody.